The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds at Camp Lejeune as Master Sergeant Jake Morrison adjusted his tactical vest for the third time. At 32, Jake had earned his reputation as one of the toughest Marine instructors on the base. His shoulders were broad from years of carrying heavy equipment, and his jaw was set in the permanent scowl that had intimidated countless recruits over the past 8 years of his military career. Today was different, though. Today, the Marines were conducting joint training exercises with other branches of the military, including some Navy personnel who had been assigned to participate in the advanced combat simulation. Jake had heard rumors about the mixed group, and honestly, he wasn't thrilled about it. In his experience, joint operations often meant dealing with people who didn't understand Marine discipline and standards. As he walked toward the briefing area, Jake noticed a small figure in Navy fatigues sitting alone on a bench, checking equipment with methodical precision. The person was clearly female, probably in her late 40s, with graying brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun. She looked completely out of place among the younger, more physically imposing Marines who were gathering for the exercise. Jake shook his head slightly. He had nothing against women in the military, but this particular training exercise was designed to push people to their absolute limits. It involved advanced close-quarters combat, wilderness survival, and extreme physical challenges that would test even the most experienced soldiers. He wondered what desk job this Navy woman usually worked and why she had been assigned to participate in something so demanding. The woman's name tape read S. Chen, and Jake noticed she was wearing the insignia of a lieutenant commander. Despite her rank, she appeared to be around 5 feet 4 inches tall and couldn't weigh more than 130 pounds. Jake found himself wondering if the Navy had made some kind of administrative error in sending her to this particular training program. As the morning progressed, the group of 24 military personnel gathered in the briefing room. Captain Rodriguez, the commanding officer overseeing the exercise, began explaining the day's objectives. The training would simulate a hostage rescue operation in an urban environment, followed by wilderness evasion tactics, and would conclude with hand-to-hand combat assessments. Jake glanced around the room and noticed that Lieutenant Commander Chen was taking notes with the same focused intensity as everyone else. She didn't seem nervous or out of place, which surprised him somewhat. Most people who were in over their heads at least showed some signs of anxiety. During the equipment check phase, Jake found himself assigned to the same 4-person team as Chen, along with 2 other Marines. Corporal Davis, a 24-year-old from Texas who specialized in communications, and Sergeant Williams, a combat engineer with 6 years of experience. Jake naturally assumed the leadership role, given his rank and experience. "All right, listen up," Jake said, addressing his team members. "This is going to be a tough day, and we need to work as a unit. Lieutenant Commander Chen, I know you're Navy, so just stay close and follow our lead. We'll make sure you get through this safely." Chen looked up from her gear with an expression that was difficult to read. "I appreciate your concern, Master Sergeant, but I think I'll manage just fine. Let's focus on the mission objectives." Her voice was calm and professional, but Jake detected something else underneath. Maybe confidence. Maybe something more. He decided to let it slide for now, but made a mental note to keep an extra eye on her during the more challenging portions of the exercise. The first phase of the training took place in a mock urban environment that had been constructed on the base. The scenario involved infiltrating a building where hostages were being held by simulated terrorists. Each team member had specific responsibilities, and success would depend on precise coordination and timing. As they approached the target building, Jake was surprised to see Chen moving with fluid, practiced motions. She seemed to understand tactical positioning instinctively and was anticipating the team's movements before he even gave instructions. When they reached the entry point, she signaled that she had identified 2 potential sniper positions that Jake had missed in his initial assessment. "Good eye," Jake admitted grudgingly. "Davis, Williams, You see what the lieutenant commander spotted? Those windows on the second floor could be problematic. The team executed their entry flawlessly, with Chen proving to be both highly skilled and completely unflappable under pressure. During the room-clearing phase, her movements were so precise and efficient that Jake found himself wondering where a Navy officer had learned such advanced tactical skills. Most Navy personnel he had worked with were excellent at their jobs, but this level of close-quarters combat expertise was unusual unless someone had received very specialized training. When they reached the room where the hostages were being held, the scenario called for one team member to neutralize a terrorist in hand-to-hand combat while the others secured the area. The exercise instructor pointed at Chen and indicated that she would be the one facing the combat challenge. Jake started to object. "Sir, maybe one of the Marines should handle this part. We've got more experience with—" "Negative, Master Sergeant," the instructor interrupted. "Lieutenant Commander Chen is the designated participant for this scenario. Let's see what she can do." The terrorist in this case was Staff Sergeant Miguel Santos, a Marine who stood 6 feet 2 inches tall and weighed at least 200 pounds. Santos was known throughout the base as one of the best hand-to-hand combat specialists in his unit. He had been training in various martial arts since he was a teenager and had won several military combat competitions. Jake watched with growing concern as Chen stepped forward to face Santos. The size difference was dramatic, and Jake began to worry that someone was going to get seriously hurt. He had seen Santos spar before, and the man was incredibly strong and fast. Even if he was holding back because his opponent was smaller and older, accidents could happen easily in this type of training. "Ma'am, are you sure about this?" Jake asked quietly. "There's no shame in letting one of us handle it." Chen turned to look at him with eyes that seemed much older and more experienced than her years. "Master Sergeant Morrison, I understand your concern, but I assure you that I can take care of myself. Please trust me on this." There was something in her tone that made Jake step back, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. Chen moved to the center of the training mat and faced Santos, who was stretching his shoulders and looking confident about the upcoming match. The instructor explained the rules. The combat would continue until one participant was pinned or submitted, or until he determined that one fighter was clearly dominating. Safety was the top priority, and anyone could call for a stop at any time. Santos approached the match with obvious confidence, probably expecting to end things quickly. He was used to overwhelming opponents with his size and strength advantage, and this seemed like it would be one of his easier challenges. What happened next left Jake completely speechless. The moment Santos moved forward to initiate contact, Chen seemed to transform into someone entirely different. Her movements became fluid and precise in a way that Jake had never seen before. She didn't try to match Santos's strength directly. Instead, she used his own momentum and weight against him with techniques that appeared almost effortless. Within seconds, Santos found himself off balance and struggling to maintain his footing. Chen moved around him like water, always seeming to be exactly where she needed to be, while staying just out of reach of his attempts to grab or strike her. When Santos tried to use his reach advantage, she closed the distance so quickly that he couldn't react in time. Jake watched in amazement as Chen executed a series of movements that resulted in Santos being flipped onto his back with such speed and precision that it looked almost like magic. Before the much larger Marine could recover, Chen had secured a submission hold that left him completely immobilized. The entire exchange had lasted less than 30 seconds. Santos tapped out immediately, recognizing that he was completely outmatched. As Chen released the hold and helped him to his feet, Jake could see the respect and surprise in the younger Marine's eyes. Santos was not someone who was easily impressed, but he was clearly reevaluating his assumptions about his opponent. "Where did you learn to fight like that, ma'am?" Santos asked, rubbing his shoulder where Chen had applied the submission hold. Chen smiled slightly but didn't answer the question directly. Good training partners and lots of practice, Staff Sergeant. You've got excellent fundamentals, by the way. Your instructors taught you well. Jake stood there trying to process what he had just witnessed. In 8 years of military service, he had seen plenty of impressive displays of skill and training, but this was something entirely different. Chen had just defeated one of the base's best fighters, using techniques that seemed to combine multiple martial arts disciplines with tactical knowledge that suggested extensive real-world experience. During the lunch break between training phases, Jake found himself walking alongside Chen as they headed toward the mess hall. He was trying to figure out how to ask the questions that were burning in his mind without seeming rude or inappropriate. "Lieutenant Commander," he began carefully, "I have to admit, that was some impressive work back there with Santos. Most Navy officers I've worked with have solid basic combat training, but what you demonstrated was at an entirely different level." Chen nodded politely, but didn't offer any additional information. "Thank you, Master Sergeant. I've been fortunate to have some excellent instructors over the years." Jake sensed that there was much more to the story, but Chen clearly wasn't interested in sharing details about her background. As they continued walking, he found himself studying her more carefully. There was something about the way she moved and carried herself that suggested extensive combat experience, but her personnel file hadn't mentioned anything unusual about her service record. The afternoon phase of the training involved wilderness survival and evasion tactics. Teams were dropped at different locations in the wooded area surrounding the base and given specific objectives to accomplish while avoiding enemy patrols that would be hunting for them. Once again, Chen proved to be far more capable than Jake had expected. She demonstrated knowledge of camouflage and concealment techniques that were typically taught only in specialized schools, and her ability to move silently through dense forest was remarkable. When they encountered one of the enemy patrols, she suggested a route that allowed them to complete their objective without being detected. By the end of the day, Jake's entire perspective on his teammate had changed completely. Chen had not only kept up with the demanding training schedule, but had actually performed better than most of the Marines in several areas. Her tactical knowledge, combat skills, and leadership abilities were clearly the result of extensive advanced training and real-world experience. As the teams gathered for the final debrief, Captain Rodriguez announced the results of the day's exercises. Jake's team had achieved the highest scores in all categories, with particular recognition for their coordination and tactical execution. The captain specifically mentioned Chen's performance during the close-quarters combat phase and her contributions to the team's overall success. After the formal debrief concluded, Jake approached Chen as she was packing up her gear. He was feeling somewhat embarrassed about his earlier assumptions and wanted to apologize for his condescending attitude at the beginning of the day. "Lieutenant Commander," he said, "I owe you an apology. I made some assumptions this morning that were completely wrong, and I want you to know that I have tremendous respect for your abilities and experience." Chen looked up from her equipment bag and smiled genuinely for the first time that day. "I appreciate that, Master Sergeant Morrison. No harm done. I'm used to people making assumptions based on appearances. The important thing is that we worked well together as a team." Jake nodded, but he was still curious about her background. "If you don't mind me asking, where did you receive your combat training? Some of those techniques you used today were unlike anything I've seen before." For a moment, Chen seemed to be considering how much to reveal. Finally, she spoke quietly. "I've had some specialized training over the years, but most of it is classified. Let's just say that the Navy has some very interesting career paths for people with the right qualifications and security clearances." Jake realized that he was probably not going to get more specific information, but Chen's careful wording told him everything he needed to know. She had clearly been involved in operations that required the highest levels of training and security clearance. The kind of skills she had demonstrated that day were not learned in standard military schools. As they walked toward the parking area, Jake found himself wondering about the missions and operations that Chen had probably participated in during her career. He also realized that his initial assumptions about her capabilities had been based on outdated and prejudiced thinking that had no place in the modern military. The day's events had been a humbling experience for Jake in many ways. He had been forced to confront his own biases and recognize that experience and skill came in many different forms. Chen had proven that respect had to be earned through performance and character, not assumed based on rank, age, or physical appearance. As they reached their vehicles, Chen turned to Jake one more time. "Master Sergeant, thank you for being open-minded today. Not everyone is willing to adjust their perspective when presented with new information. That kind of flexibility is what makes someone a true leader." Jake watched as Chen drove away, still processing everything that had happened during the training exercise. He realized that he had learned as much about himself that day as he had about military tactics and teamwork. The encounter had challenged his assumptions and reminded him that the military was full of people with extraordinary backgrounds and capabilities that might not be immediately apparent. That evening, as Jake sat in his quarters writing his training report, he found himself wondering about Chen's story and the missions she had probably undertaken during her career. He also made a mental note to be more careful about making assumptions about his fellow service members in the future, regardless of their branch of service, rank, or appearance. 2 weeks after the joint training exercise, Jake Morrison found himself thinking about Lieutenant Commander Chen more often than he cared to admit. Her performance during the combat simulation had completely shattered his preconceived notions, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to her story than she had revealed. The opportunity to learn more came sooner than expected. Captain Rodriguez called Jake into his office on a rainy Tuesday morning and informed him that he would be participating in another joint operation, this time a week-long advanced tactical training course being held at a specialized facility in Virginia. The course was designed for senior non-commissioned officers and mid-level officers who were being prepared for special operations assignments. "You'll be working with some of the best people from all branches of the military," Captain Rodriguez explained. "This is an excellent opportunity to expand your skill set and network with other experienced professionals. The Navy is sending several personnel, including Lieutenant Commander Chen." Jake felt a mixture of anticipation and curiosity at hearing Chen's name. He was genuinely interested in working with her again, partly because he respected her abilities and partly because he hoped to learn more about her mysterious background. The tactical training facility in Virginia was unlike anything Jake had seen before. The buildings were modern and nondescript from the outside, but the interior contained some of the most advanced simulation equipment in the military. The course roster included 24 participants representing all branches of the armed forces, and Jake quickly realized that this was not a typical training program. During the initial briefing, the course director, Colonel Sarah Mitchell, explained that participants would be evaluated on advanced tactical planning, leadership under extreme stress, and specialized combat techniques. The scenarios would simulate real-world operations that required split-second decision-making and exceptional teamwork. Jake spotted Chen during the briefing, and she nodded politely when their eyes met. She was wearing the same focused expression he remembered from their previous training, and he noticed that several other participants seemed to be studying her with curiosity, probably wondering what a Navy officer was doing in such an intensive, combat-focused program. The first day of training involved team assignments and initial assessments. Jake was pleased to learn that he would be working with Chen again, along with an Army Ranger named Captain Lisa Park and an Air Force pararescue specialist, Technical Sergeant Mike Torres. The team composition was clearly designed to bring together people with complementary skills and different perspectives. During the team introduction phase, each member was asked to briefly describe their military background and areas of expertise. Captain Park spoke about her experience in airborne operations and mountain warfare. Technical Sergeant Torres discussed his training in combat search and rescue operations. When it was Jake's turn, he outlined his experience as a Marine instructor and his specialization in urban combat tactics. Chen's introduction was characteristically brief and somewhat vague. I'm Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, currently assigned to Naval Special Warfare Command. I have experience in maritime operations, tactical planning, and various specialized skills that I hope will contribute to our team's success. Jake noticed that she had mentioned Naval Special Warfare Command, which was a significant detail he hadn't known before. NSSW Command was responsible for overseeing SEAL operations and other highly classified naval special operations units. The fact that Chen was assigned there suggested that her background was even more specialized than he had initially suspected. The first practical exercise involved a complex scenario where the team had to plan and execute a hostage rescue operation in a multi-level building with multiple hostile forces. Each team member was expected to contribute to the tactical planning phase, and Jake was impressed by Chen's detailed knowledge of building assault techniques and hostage psychology. We need to consider the possibility that the hostiles have rigged the building with explosive devices, Chen suggested during the planning session. I recommend we assign someone to specifically look for booby traps during the entry phase, and we should have contingency plans for multiple escape routes in case the primary exit becomes compromised. Her suggestions demonstrated a level of operational experience that went far beyond theoretical training. Jake found himself wondering how many real hostage rescue operations Chen had participated in during her career. During the execution phase of the exercise, Chen once again demonstrated remarkable skills. Her movements were precise and confident, and she seemed to anticipate problems before they developed. When the team encountered an unexpected obstacle in the form of a locked door that required breaching, Chen produced a small device from her equipment kit and had the door open in less than 20 seconds. "Where did you learn to do that?" Captain Park asked with obvious admiration. "Advanced entry techniques are part of the curriculum in some Navy schools," Chen replied diplomatically, but Jake caught the slight smile that suggested there was more to the story. As the week progressed, Jake began to notice patterns in Chen's behavior and knowledge that painted a picture of someone with extensive real-world combat experience. She knew things about explosive devices that were typically taught only in specialized bomb disposal schools. Her knowledge of foreign weapon systems was encyclopedic. Most telling of all, she had an intuitive understanding of tactical situations that could only come from years of actual operations. On the third day of training, the teams were presented with a scenario that involved infiltrating an enemy facility to gather intelligence. The exercise required participants to demonstrate skills in covert entry, surveillance, and information extraction while avoiding detection by sophisticated security systems. During the planning phase, Chen sketched out an infiltration route that was so detailed and well thought out that it looked like something from a professional intelligence operation. She identified security vulnerabilities that the other team members had missed and suggested countermeasures for electronic surveillance equipment that Jake hadn't even known existed. "You've done this before, haven't you?" Jake asked quietly during a break in the planning session. "I mean, not just training exercises, you've actually infiltrated real enemy facilities." Chen looked at him for a long moment before responding. "Master Sergeant Morrison, there are aspects of my service record that I'm not at liberty to discuss in detail. I can tell you that the Navy has provided me with extensive training opportunities over the years, and I've been fortunate to work with some exceptional people who taught me a great deal." Jake realized that Chen was being as forthcoming as she could be while staying within the boundaries of operational security. Her careful wording confirmed his suspicions that she had been involved in highly classified operations that she couldn't discuss openly. During the execution of the infiltration exercise, Chen's performance was flawless. She moved through the simulated enemy facility like a ghost, avoiding detection systems with an expertise that amazed even the instructors. When the team needed to extract information from a computer terminal, Chen produced another specialized device and completed the task with the efficiency of someone who had done similar work many times before. The exercise concluded with the team successfully completing their mission without being detected, earning them the highest scores in the class. During the debrief session, Colonel Mitchell specifically praised Chen's technical skills and tactical knowledge. That evening, the participants were given free time to relax and socialize. Jake found Chen sitting alone in the facility's recreation area, reading a book about military history. He approached her cautiously, not wanting to intrude, but hoping for an opportunity to learn more about her background. "Mind if I join you?" Jake asked, gesturing to an empty chair nearby. "Of course not," Chen replied, closing her book and setting it aside. "It's been a good week so far. Your team is working very well together." Jake sat down and decided to be direct about his curiosity. "Lieutenant Commander, I hope this doesn't sound inappropriate, but I'm having trouble understanding your background. The skills you've demonstrated this week go far beyond what most Navy officers learn, even in specialized schools. You handle yourself like someone with extensive special operations experience." Chen was quiet for a moment, apparently considering how to respond. Finally, she spoke carefully. "Jake, I appreciate your curiosity, and I understand why my background might seem unusual. I can tell you that I've been in the Navy for 25 years, and during that time, I've had the opportunity to receive training and participate in operations that aren't part of the standard career path for most officers." 25 years? Jake was surprised. "You don't look old enough to have that much time in service." Chen smiled slightly. "I enlisted when I was 18, right out of high school. I've been doing this job for longer than some of our colleagues have been alive." Jake did some quick math in his head and realized that Chen was probably in her early 40s, though she looked at least 10 years younger. More importantly, 25 years of military service suggested that she had extensive experience in multiple roles and assignments. "What kind of operations?" Jake asked, though he suspected that Chen wouldn't be able to provide specific details. "The kind that don't appear on official records and aren't discussed in public," Chen replied. "I can tell you that the Navy has some very specialized units that handle situations requiring unique skill sets. People in those units receive training that prepares them for missions that most military personnel never encounter." Jake realized that Chen was describing involvement with Navy SEALs or similar special operations units. The pieces were starting to fit together. Her combat skills, technical knowledge, and operational experience all made sense if she had been part of the special warfare community. "How long were you involved with special operations?" Jake asked. "Most of my career," Chen admitted. "I've only been in my current administrative role for the past 2 years. Before that, I spent over 2 decades in operational assignments." Jake felt a sense of awe at this revelation. He was talking to someone who had spent most of her adult life participating in the kind of missions that most people only saw in movies. Her casual demeanor and modest attitude made it easy to forget that she was probably one of the most experienced special operations veterans in the entire military. "Why did you transition to an administrative role?" Jake asked. Chen's expression became more serious. "Age and injuries eventually catch up with everyone in this line of work. I reached a point where I could contribute more effectively by training the next generation and providing operational support rather than continuing in direct action roles." Jake noticed that Chen had mentioned injuries, and he wondered what kind of experiences she had endured during her operational career. The fact that she was now participating in advanced tactical training suggested that her transition to administrative work hadn't diminished her skills or knowledge. The conversation was interrupted by Technical Sergeant Torres, who approached their table with a concerned expression. "Hey, Have you guys heard what's happening with tomorrow's exercise? Apparently, they're bringing in some kind of real-world scenario that just developed. Colonel Mitchell appeared in the recreation area and called for everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to brief you on a change to tomorrow's training schedule. We've received a request to provide support for an actual operational situation that has developed. A group of hikers has become lost in a remote wilderness area about 50 miles from here, and local search and rescue teams are having difficulty locating them due to severe weather conditions. The colonel explained that the training exercise would be modified to incorporate a real search and rescue mission. Teams would be deployed to different grid squares in the wilderness area and would use their training to locate and extract the missing hikers. The operation would be conducted under realistic conditions with actual weather and terrain challenges. Jake felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness at the prospect of participating in a real mission. He glanced at Chen and saw that her expression had become intensely focused, as if she had mentally shifted into operational mode. "This is what we train for," Chen said quietly. "Tomorrow we get to put our skills to work helping real people in a real emergency." The next morning, Jake's team was assigned to search a mountainous area that was known to be particularly challenging due to steep terrain and dense forest cover. The weather conditions were harsh, with heavy rain and strong winds that made flying conditions marginal for the helicopters that would be providing transportation and support. During the flight to their assigned search area, Jake observed Chen's transformation from training participant to operational professional. She checked and rechecked her equipment with methodical precision, studied topographical maps with intense concentration, and discussed contingency plans with the kind of detailed knowledge that could only come from years of real-world experience. When the team was inserted into their search area, Chen immediately took charge of organizing the search pattern and establishing communication protocols. Her leadership style was calm and confident, and Jake found himself following her guidance without question, despite his senior rank. The search operation proved to be more challenging than anyone had anticipated. The terrain was treacherous, visibility was limited due to weather conditions, and the missing hikers had apparently wandered far off the established trail system. After 6 hours of intensive searching, Jake's team had covered most of their assigned area without finding any trace of the missing people. It was Chen who spotted the crucial clue that led to the successful rescue. While examining a rocky outcropping that the rest of the team had passed by, she noticed fabric threads caught on a bush that indicated someone had recently passed through the area. Following the trail suggested by these small signs, the team eventually located the missing hikers in a small cave where they had taken shelter from the storm. The hikers were suffering from hypothermia and exhaustion, but Chen's knowledge of emergency medical procedures proved invaluable in stabilizing their condition until helicopter evacuation could be arranged. Jake watched in admiration as she administered first aid with the same calm competence she had demonstrated in all their training exercises. During the helicopter ride back to base, Jake reflected on everything he had learned about Chen during the past week. Her performance during the real rescue operation had confirmed his suspicions about her background and demonstrated that her skills were not just theoretical knowledge, but practical capabilities honed through years of real-world experience. As they landed at the training facility, Chen turned to Jake with a serious expression. "Master Sergeant, I want to thank you for your professionalism this week. Working with someone who's willing to learn and adapt makes all the difference in situations like this." Jake realized that Chen's comment contained an important lesson about leadership and teamwork. Despite her extensive experience and specialized training, she had never made him feel inadequate or tried to overshadow his contributions to the team. Instead, she had shared her knowledge generously and created an environment where everyone could contribute their best efforts. The successful completion of the rescue operation earned Jake's team recognition from both the training facility staff and the local authorities who had requested their assistance. More importantly, The experience had given Jake new insights into the kind of person Chen was and the depth of experience she brought to any mission or training exercise. As the week concluded and participants prepared to return to their home bases, Jake sought out Chen for a final conversation. He wanted to express his gratitude for what she had taught him and to acknowledge the professional respect that had developed between them. "Lieutenant Commander," Jake said, "I wanted you to know that working with you this week has been one of the most educational experiences of my career. You've shown me what real professionalism and expertise look like, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn from someone with your background." Chen smiled warmly and extended her hand for a professional handshake. "The feeling is mutual, Jake. You've demonstrated the kind of leadership qualities and adaptability that make someone an asset to any team. I hope we have the opportunity to work together again in the future." As Jake watched Chen walk away, he realized that his assumptions about military service and professional competence had been fundamentally changed by their encounters. She had shown him that experience and skill came in many forms, and that respect had to be earned through performance rather than assumed based on appearances or stereotypes. 6 months had passed since the joint training exercises in Virginia, and Jake Morrison found himself looking forward to an unexpected reunion. Command had assigned him to participate in a special ceremony at the Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters in Coronado, California. The event was to honor retiring personnel who had made significant contributions to special operations during their careers. Jake had been selected to represent the Marine Corps due to his outstanding performance in recent joint training operations and his growing reputation as someone who worked exceptionally well with personnel from other military branches. What he didn't know until he arrived at the ceremony was that Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen would be one of the people being honored. The ceremony took place in an auditorium filled with some of the most decorated special operations personnel from all branches of the military. As Jake took his seat, he noticed that the atmosphere was more formal and reverent than typical military gatherings. The people being honored that day were clearly held in very high regard by their peers. Admiral Rebecca Thompson, the commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Command, took the podium to begin the ceremony. She spoke about the sacrifices made by special operations personnel and the importance of recognizing those who had dedicated their careers to protecting national security through dangerous and often classified missions. Today, we honor several exceptional individuals who have served with distinction in roles that few people will ever fully understand, Admiral Thompson announced. These men and women have operated in the shadows, often at great personal risk, to ensure the safety and security of our nation and our allies. Jake listened with growing anticipation as the Admiral began introducing the individuals being honored. When she reached Chen's name, Jake felt his attention sharpen as he finally began to learn the truth about his former teammate's background. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen enlisted in the Navy 25 years ago and quickly distinguished herself during basic training and subsequent advanced schools, Admiral Thompson began. After completing initial training, she was selected for the most demanding program in naval special warfare, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. Jake felt his jaw drop slightly. Chen had been a SEAL. Everything about her performance during their training exercises suddenly made perfect sense. She hadn't just received specialized training, she had undergone one of the most grueling selection and training programs in the entire military. Admiral Thompson continued, Lieutenant Commander Chen was one of only 12 women to attempt SEAL training during the early experimental phase of gender integration, and she was the first to successfully complete the entire program. Her completion of BUDS training was followed by advanced schools in demolitions, foreign weapons systems, maritime operations, and tactical leadership. The audience of special operations professionals responded with respectful applause, but Jake could sense that there was even more to Chen's story. Admiral Thompson's tone suggested that the most significant aspects of Chen's career were yet to be revealed. Following her completion of SEAL training, Lieutenant Commander Chen was assigned to SEAL Team 6, where she participated in classified operations on 5 different continents over the course of 15 years, the Admiral continued. Her operational record includes participation in counterterrorism missions, hostage rescue operations, and high-value target captures that helped disrupt some of the most dangerous terrorist organizations in the world. Jake realized that he had been training alongside someone who was essentially a living legend in the special operations community. SEAL Team 6 was the most elite unit within an already elite organization, and 15 years of operational service with that unit meant that Chen had probably participated in missions that would never be publicly acknowledged. Admiral Thompson's voice took on an even more serious tone as she continued. During her operational career, Lieutenant Commander Chen was wounded in action on 3 separate occasions and was awarded the Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars with Combat V, and the Purple Heart with 2 oak leaf clusters. Her courage and dedication under the most dangerous circumstances exemplified the highest traditions of naval special warfare. The mention of multiple combat wounds explained some things that Jake had noticed about Chen during their training exercises. Her slight limp during long marches and the way she sometimes favored her left shoulder were apparently the result of injuries sustained during actual combat operations. In addition to her operational achievements, Admiral Thompson continued, Lieutenant Commander Chen served as an instructor at various special operations schools and was instrumental in developing new training programs for maritime counterterrorism operations. Her expertise in close-quarters combat, tactical planning, and operational leadership has influenced an entire generation of special operations personnel. Jake thought back to Chen's performance during their hand-to-hand combat exercise and realized that she had probably been holding back significantly. Someone with her level of training and experience could have easily caused serious injury to Staff Sergeant Santos if she had chosen to demonstrate her full capabilities. 2 years ago, Lieutenant Commander Chen transitioned from operational assignments to a role in training and program development, Admiral Thompson explained. Her current position involves overseeing joint training exercises between different military branches and developing new tactical protocols for special operations units. Even in this administrative role, she has continued to participate in training exercises to maintain her skills and share her knowledge with other personnel. The Admiral paused before delivering what Jake sensed would be the most significant part of Chen's recognition. Today, as Lieutenant Commander Chen retires from active duty after 25 years of exceptional service, we acknowledge not only her personal achievements, but also her role as a pioneer who helped open doors for future generations of women in special operations. Her success in the most demanding military roles has demonstrated that dedication, skill, and courage are not determined by gender, but by character and commitment. As Chen walked to the podium to receive her recognition, Jake felt a profound sense of humility. He had initially dismissed her based on superficial characteristics and assumptions, never realizing that he was in the presence of someone who had achieved things that most military personnel could only dream of. When Chen reached the microphone to deliver her retirement remarks, her voice carried the same calm confidence that Jake remembered from their training exercises. She spoke briefly about the honor of serving alongside exceptional people and the importance of supporting each other regardless of branch of service or background. Military service has taught me that our greatest strength comes from our diversity of experiences and perspectives, Chen said. When we work together and trust each other's abilities, we can accomplish things that would be impossible as individuals. I encourage everyone here to approach future collaborations with open minds and respect for what each person brings to the team. Jake realized that Chen's words were directed at lessons that extended far beyond military service. She was talking about the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to recognize the value that each person could contribute. After the formal ceremony concluded, Jake approached Chen during the reception that followed. He felt somewhat nervous about the conversation, knowing that his initial assumptions about her had been so completely wrong. "Lieutenant Commander," Jake began, then corrected himself. "I guess I should say Ms. Chen now. I wanted to congratulate you on your retirement and thank you for everything you taught me during our training exercises." Chen smiled warmly and extended her hand. "Thank you, Jake, and please call me Sarah. We're both civilians now, at least partially." Jake took her hand and found himself struggling to find the right words. "Sarah, I owe you an enormous apology. When we first met, I made assumptions about your capabilities based on completely superficial observations. I had no idea about your background or experience, and I'm embarrassed by how I initially treated you." Chen's expression remained kind but serious. "Jake, you don't need to apologize. Your initial reaction was unfortunately typical, and I'm used to dealing with people's assumptions. What matters is that you were willing to adjust your perspective based on performance and evidence. That's the mark of a good leader." "But I should have shown more respect from the beginning," Jake insisted. "You had every right to be offended by my condescending attitude." "Actually," Chen replied, "your willingness to learn and adapt made our working relationship much more productive than it would have been if you had simply deferred to my rank or experience. You evaluated my contributions based on merit, which is exactly how professional relationships should work." Jake realized that Chen was being generous in her assessment of his behavior, but he appreciated her perspective. She had managed to turn what could have been a negative experience into a learning opportunity for both of them. "Can I ask you something that's been bothering me?" Jake said. "During our training exercises, you were clearly holding back significantly. You could have made the rest of us look incompetent if you had wanted to demonstrate your full capabilities." "Why didn't you?" Chen considered the question thoughtfully before answering. "There's a difference between showing off and being effective, Jake. My job during those exercises was to help the team succeed, not to prove how skilled I was individually. Besides, I learned a long time ago that people are more receptive to learning when they don't feel threatened or inadequate." Jake nodded, understanding that Chen's approach reflected a sophisticated understanding of leadership and teamwork. She had found ways to contribute her expertise while allowing others to maintain their dignity and confidence. "What are your plans for retirement?" Jake asked, genuinely curious about what someone with Chen's background would do after leaving military service. "I'll be working with a private security company that provides training services to law enforcement and military organizations," Chen explained. "I'll also be doing some consulting work for companies that need expertise in security planning and risk assessment. It's a way to continue using my skills while having more flexibility in my schedule." Jake thought about the wealth of knowledge and experience that Chen would be bringing to her civilian career. Organizations would be incredibly fortunate to have access to someone with her background and expertise. As their conversation continued, Jake found himself thinking about the broader lessons he had learned through his interactions with Chen. She had challenged his assumptions not just about women in combat roles, but about the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to recognize people's true capabilities and contributions. "Sarah," Jake said, "I want you to know that knowing you has changed how I approach working with other people. You've shown me that respect has to be earned through performance, but it also has to be offered initially based on the assumption that everyone has something valuable to contribute." Chen's smile became more genuine. "That might be the most important lesson anyone can learn in military service or in life, Jake. When we start with respect and openness, rather than skepticism and assumptions, we create environments where everyone can do their best work." As the reception began to wind down, Jake and Chen exchanged contact information and promised to stay in touch. Jake felt grateful for the opportunity to express his appreciation and to learn more about the remarkable person he had been fortunate enough to work with. During his flight back to Camp Lejeune, Jake reflected on everything he had learned about Chen and about himself during their interactions. Her story had forced him to confront his own biases and assumptions, while her professionalism and teaching approach had helped him grow as both a Marine and as a person. Jake also thought about the broader implications of Chen's career and achievements. As one of the first women to complete SEAL training and serve in elite special operations units, she had paved the way for future generations while maintaining the highest professional standards. Her success had been achieved through merit and performance rather than lowered standards or special accommodations. Most importantly, Chen had demonstrated that excellence in military service came from character, dedication, and skill rather than from physical appearance or demographic characteristics. Her example had shown Jake that the most dangerous assumption was to underestimate someone based on superficial observations. When Jake returned to his duties at Camp Lejeune, he found himself approaching training exercises and personnel evaluations with a fundamentally different perspective. He made a conscious effort to focus on performance and potential rather than initial impressions, and he worked to create environments where all personnel could demonstrate their capabilities without facing unfair assumptions or barriers. Several months later, Jake was assigned to oversee a training exercise that included personnel from multiple military branches. Among the participants was a young Air Force officer who appeared to be physically small and inexperienced. Jake's first instinct was to wonder if the officer would be able to handle the demanding training requirements. Then Jake remembered Chen's example and decided to reserve judgment until he could observe the officer's actual performance. As it turned out, the Air Force officer was a highly skilled pilot with extensive experience in combat search and rescue operations. His technical knowledge and tactical expertise proved invaluable to the success of the training exercise. After the exercise concluded, Jake approached the young officer to express his appreciation for his contributions. During their conversation, Jake mentioned his experience training with Chen and the lessons he had learned about the importance of evaluating people based on their performance rather than initial assumptions. "I think Lieutenant Commander Chen would be pleased to know that her example is continuing to influence how people approach training and teamwork," the officer replied. "People like her make all of us better at what we do." Jake realized that Chen's influence extended far beyond the individual people she had worked with directly. Her example of professionalism, competence, and leadership was creating ripple effects throughout the military community, encouraging others to adopt more open-minded and merit-based approaches to collaboration and evaluation. As Jake's own career progressed, he made it a point to share Chen's story with other Marines, particularly those who might benefit from examining their own assumptions about their colleagues and teammates. He found that her example was powerful, not just because of her individual achievements, but because of the way she had handled success with humility and grace. Years later, when Jake was promoted to the position of Senior Enlisted Advisor for his unit, he instituted new training protocols that emphasized the importance of recognizing and utilizing the diverse skills and experiences that personnel brought to their assignments. He often told new Marines about the importance of approaching colleagues with respect and openness rather than skepticism and assumptions. Jake never forgot the lessons he learned from his encounters with Sarah Chen. Her example had taught him that true leadership involved recognizing and developing the potential in others, regardless of their background or appearance. Most importantly, she had shown him that the strongest teams were built on mutual respect and the recognition that everyone had something valuable to contribute. The story of Jake's initial assumptions and subsequent learning became a cautionary tale that he shared with other military personnel about the dangers of prejudgment and the importance of maintaining an open mind. Chen's legacy lived on not just in her individual achievements, but in the positive changes she had inspired in the people who had been fortunate enough to work with her. In the end, Jake realized that his encounter with Sarah Chen had made him a better Marine, a better leader, and a better person. Her example had shown him that respect, professionalism, and excellence were qualities that transcended rank, branch of service, and personal characteristics. The lessons he learned from her continued to influence his approach to military service and leadership throughout the remainder of his career.